I think if you talk to most people of the voting public, there's only, a couple key 3 messages that people take away from it.
Right.
And I think it's fair, and push back if you think I'm being unfair, but I think one of the key takeaways from Carney's election platform is he was selling Canadians on the idea that he was going to be the guy to get a deal with Trump.
Right.
Is that fair? Right?
Yeah.
Like that was kind of his key election.
Listen, he paid Mike Myers and all those people to get into jerseys, right?
Yeah. So that was his key platform. Now, fast forward to today, we're more than a year out of that election. Where is the improvement?
True Patriot Love is now in Ottawa with Franco Terrazzano. Welcome.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Welcome to Ottawa.
Finally. We talked about it in a long time. It's good to be back. I mentioned to you, I did a property here in Ottawa, and I was here for a couple years. Love the city. You're a Calgary boy, right?
Yeah.
I remember. And you made it this way?
Yeah. They shipped me off from Calgary to Ottawa. I was the Alberta director at the time about, 5.5 years ago, and then my phone rings. It's my boss. And he's, immediately I thought I just got into trouble. I'm like, hey, man, sorry, blah, blah, blah. What did I do wrong? He's like, I don't know what you're talking about, but do you want this promotion to be the national guy up in Ottawa?
Yeah.
And here I am 5.5 years later.
And how do you like it? Tell me, living in Ottawa, is it different? It's definitely different than Calgary, right?
Yeah.
Do you notice the difference?
Yeah, the mindset is a lot different, right?
Yeah.
Like Calgary's a very entrepreneurial city.
Yeah.
Right? Like private enterprise, free enterprise, like that's kind of the groundwork of Calgary. I don't want to paint too broad of a brush, right?
Oh, no.
Different people in all different types of communities. But, Calgary and then the surrounding area, because my family was actually 2 hours south in Lethbridge.
Oh, okay.
So an even smaller city. So again, Southern Alberta, very free enterprise mind. When there's a problem, people don't say they should fix it. They say, how can we fix it?
I know.
Right? But Ottawa, the mindset's a little bit different. I don't want to paint too broad of a brush, because one of the misconceptions about Ottawa is that it's just a government town.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously this is where the heartbeat of politics is. You got the federal government right here. You got the city here as well. But, there's another part of Ottawa, which is some of my best friends, right? A gym owner, a mechanic, right? He owns his own mechanic shop. So it's not just a government town. You still have a lot of different parts of the city that are like any other city that you would go to.
Yeah, big high-tech market here,
Mm-hmm.
Industry, automation, robotics when I was here. Of course, great racetrack used to be here. I don't think it's here anymore, but, there's some really cool things. Wanted to get into a couple of things with you today, because the Gordie Howe Bridge came out Friday. And it was like a slow leak that came out, I think, probably out of Ottawa. And it said Gordie Howe Bridge is going to open. And the Gordie Howe Bridge has been basically shut completed since April, but shut. And all of a sudden, we get this announcement. Then on the weekend, we learned that we're now going to get only 50% of the tolls. We're now co-sharing for 15 years, 50% of the net profits of this bridge, when we already were 30 years, the $6.4 billion we put into the bridge, we were going to get back in 30 years. Now for the first 15 years, we're going to do a 50-50 split on this bridge. Any thoughts when you hear that? What are you thinking?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's funny, right? Because over the weekend, I essentially was doing media on this because it was the big story over the weekend, right? So first of all, I had to kind of do my research into what was going on. And then after I did, just a deep sense of frustration. Mm-hmm. And I think probably every Canadian, regardless of their political stripes, right? And you might be frustrated at different aspects of it, but I think every Canadian's just upset, right? Frustrated. It's been, a year and a half of this kind of stuff going on. So that's number one. Number two, right? On the one hand, we do need to have our goods and services flowing across the border, right? People who work in one jurisdiction live in another. They got to be able to get to work, all that kind of stuff, right? So we got to get the economies going. We got to get free enterprise and free trade back. So that's on the one hand. On the other hand, taxpayers have some questions. Right? We pay, Canadian taxpayers paid, just over $6 billion to build the bridge.
Yeah.
And we were supposed to be using the tolls to recoup some of that money. Now, we don't know how this new share is going to push back the timeline of us recouping that money back, but I think it's pretty obvious that it's going to take a lot longer.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, they're saying 50 to 60 years now. So what I read on the weekend, and, we're still waiting for the details, what net profit means and some of the details, but we also heard, quite frankly, that now the U.S. has some control over what the actual tolls are. And if the tolls go up by 10%, they need U.S. approval. But if they try to undercut the Ambassador Bridge, the Maroon Group, then basically they have to go back and agree with the U.S. on whether or not they can do it or not. So we struck a deal. So this is the crazy part that, in my mind, we struck a deal where we are competing with another bridge. Number one, that was a challenge to begin with because, quite frankly, we're a new bridge with a high debt load. The Ambassador Bridge, quite frankly, has been built and paid for years. So that was a challenge. Now we're in a deal where, quite frankly, we are having to get approval from the U.S. on what the toll rates are on the bridge we paid for. Why would anyone do that? And I think that's the question we have to ask. We have to ask, why would anyone enter this deal? Why would anyone have entered the deal from the beginning? It's not a great deal. I do deals all the time in my other businesses. If I did one of those deals, someone would come to me and go crazy. My shareholders would go bananas.
Yeah.
So, I think, and you and I talked before the show. The Prime Minister, he's coming into this after the fact. It's like that hot potato. It lands on your desk. You're like, oh man,
I got to deal with this.
I got to deal with this. So I don't know if he had any options. I don't know if it was a great timing. I'll be truthful with you. I think Hunter, who works with you, said before the show, with elbows up before Kuzma, was it great timing to try to get this one off the table? I was kind of questioning the timing on it in my mind. Do you wait and start to go into negotiations and put it into or do you take it off the table before?
Yeah.
I was kind of thinking, well, I think I would have waited. I would have put it in as a whole ball of wax and said to the citizens, I had to negotiate this, but I got that, or something to that effect. But this just came out of the blue. Out of the blue, we're just like, okay, we gave up half.
Yeah, so I don't, sometimes you just got to eat a slice of humble pie, right? Yep. And there's a lot of stuff that I don't know, right? I'm not around the negotiating table. I don't know. But here's a couple things that stand out to me. Okay, so number one, from the taxpayer perspective, I said it before, but I think it's worth really honing in on this point. Yeah. We're supposed to recoup that money. Now, clearly, the new deal, look, we don't know timelines, but clearly the way it is that it's going to be longer for us to recoup some of the deal, right? We're losing out on some of the profits. And as the taxpayers who paid for building it, that's a huge concern. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, the political aspect of it. And I think this comes back to accountability. Look, whenever politicians run in an election, regardless of party, right, they have a big platform with, maybe hundreds of pages, maybe 50, who knows, but all a bunch of stuff they're going to do. However, I think if you talk to most people of the voting public, there's only, a couple key 3 messages that people take away from it. Right. And I think it's fair, and push back if you think I'm being unfair, but I think one of the key takeaways from Carney's election platform is he was selling Canadians on the idea that he was going to be the guy to get a deal with Trump. Right. Is that fair? Right?
Yeah.
That was kind of his key election.
Listen, he paid Mike Myers and all those people to get into jerseys, right?
Yeah. So that was his key platform. Now, fast forward to today, we're more than a year out of that election. Where is the improvement? Maybe you can't get a deal, right? Because it takes 2 to tango, so to speak. But where is the progress? And I think that's a legitimate question because we see this deal, at least from what we've seen, isn't nearly as good as what we thought it was going to be, right? That's fair. So where's the progress? Now, maybe you can't have a perfect deal. Maybe you can't even have the deal done in this timeline. I don't know. But I also didn't make the promise, right? Okay, third thing that comes to me is just a lack of transparency around this. And let me tie this into the political situation. So one of the things that happens when you now have a majority government, not a minority government, is that the committees change. And the power of opposition members on committees change, right? So I think what would be good is like a full examination of what has gone on leading up to this point. Will that happen in committees now that you have, a majority government and control over the committees? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it needs to be looked at. And, the transparency of how the deal got done, we created this Windsor-Detroit commission that was overlooking the construction of the bridge. There are some private developers who came in. So they sold it as a private-public partnership, which is, great. I'm all for those. Quite frankly, I'd rather they be more private than public. But they sold it as a private-public partnership. I'm curious now with the deal changing, do they get their money back? So, how does it impact them? Who gets repaid? I'd like to know all of that now, right? I know Aecon had a bunch of money in the deal. There's a bunch of companies that were in this deal. It'd be nice to see how it impacts everyone because the economics of the